Welcome to the Doherty Water for Food podcast. Since 2010, the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute at the University of Nebraska has worked toward one goal, a food and water secure world. One in which global food security is ensured without compromising the use of water to meet other essential human and environmental needs. It's a daunting vision, but one that is vitally important. This podcast amplifies the voices of those making waves in this space. We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hi, I'm Crystal Powers, Research and Extension Communications Specialist for the Nebraska Water Center, Nebraska Extension, and the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute, and your host for today's podcast. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Jessica Farjan Walsh, Assistant Professor of Journalism at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and a new faculty fellow with the Water for Food Global Institute. Welcome, Jessica. I'm glad you could join us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Sure. Well, I'm an assistant professor in the College of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I've been a full-time professor here for about a year. And before that, I was getting my master's degree and teaching part-time, teaching writing and editing and reporting classes in the college. And before that, I was a newspaper reporter in Boston. Most of my newspaper career was in Boston. And I worked for 2 different newspapers out there and covered everything from feature stories to meetings to homicides and crime and court and politics. Really, you name it, I probably covered it. And then I actually grew up in Nebraska in McCook and went to college at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and got my journalism degree and then, started on my reporting career. So as a professor, now I do research, and one of my research areas and my interest is water and environmental journalism. But I also teach, I mostly teach a class for a beginning editing and reporting and writing class.
Excellent. We're glad to have you back in Nebraska. So tell us a little bit about how you first got interested in water as a journalism topic.
When I was in graduate school, I was looking for a topic for my professional project, which is sort of like a thesis. I knew I wanted to do a multimedia website on a topic because I wanted to put to use some of my video and audio and photography skills that I had learned, and because that's just what journalists are doing right now. I think it was a story in the Wall Street Journal I saw in early 2019, maybe, and it was about a man up in Wisconsin who had bought an acreage and he had drinking water wells on his property. And when he first moved there, he was able to get clean drinking water. But after a while, he was, I guess, testing his water. He found that he couldn't get any clean drinking water from his wells on his property, that the drinking water was contaminated with nitrates. And I thought, well, Wisconsin is an agricultural state and Nebraska is an agricultural state. And I wonder if this is happening here and who's been writing about it and what we know about it and if it's really a problem here. And so I started to do research, and that's actually when I learned about the UNL Water Center. And so I started doing some research, and I reached out to you, Crystal, and Jesse Starita. And I remember I met with you guys at the Mill on Innovation Campus. And I said, thank you for meeting with me. Here's what I'm thinking about doing for my professional project. I'm thinking about looking into the impacts of nitrate contamination in the groundwater. Do you guys think anyone would be interested in this? Is this something that people are talking about? And you and Jesse both said, yes, this is a big issue. We're getting more concerned about it. We're trying to increase awareness about it. And so that kind of, I went from there, and my master's degree project ended up being a series of news stories on my website, nitratesInNebraska.com, that really my goal was to just tell the story of Nebraskans who are impacted by the issue of nitrate contamination in the groundwater, which, as you know, Crystal, that also really what that equates to is nitrate contamination in the drinking water, because most Nebraskans get their drinking water source is groundwater.
As you began researching nitrate in Nebraska, what's been your most surprising thing that you've discovered?
I think one of the most surprising things I found is just the cost of that small communities, mostly rural communities, are paying to fix their nitrate drinking water contamination problems. I was really shocked to find out some of these small towns with just less than 100 people or a couple hundred people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on digging new wells, building these miles long pipelines to different communities to connect to their water treatment plants, putting reverse osmosis systems in individual homes. Like all around the state, there's all these, sort of projects that are either being funded by the state or the USDA, or sometimes there's really no way to track this. Sometimes these new wells are being funded just within a town by raising water rates. So, I was able to find out that between the USDA and the state, there was about $21 million spent on infrastructure improvements or fixes for communities that had nitrate drinking water problems over roughly the last 10 years. But that doesn't include communities that are not getting any federal assistance or federal funds, that are just kind of dealing with these problems on their own. So I like to say that this is sort of a problem that's quietly going on in the background that not a lot of people are aware of.
Let's take a step back. For those not familiar with this issue, what is nitrate, and how does nitrate get into Nebraska's drinking water?
Nitrates are a kind of nitrogen which occurs naturally in the atmosphere and in the water. And we use it for farm fertilizer, which helps plants grow. But unfortunately, if that nitrogen gets turned into nitrate, and then that nitrate ends up in the soil, and then ends up in the groundwater, then that's a problem, because most people in Nebraska get their drinking water from the ground. And if there's nitrates in that groundwater, then there could be nitrates in your drinking water, and that could cause health problems.
So tell me more about how those nitrates end up in our drinking water.
Anytime there's more nitrogen than the plants need to grow, some of that turns into nitrates in the soil, and then it's very soluble once it gets into the water. And then if you have rain or irrigation, the nitrates get carried down into the water table, and also can get, run off into streams. And that's when you run into problems, especially in Nebraska, where most of us get our drinking water from the groundwater. Those nitrates are seeping in through the soil into the groundwater. And then it can be, sort of hard to, map them, and they don't really behave in logical ways, right? And so that's when you get into trouble, and it can be difficult to, educate people about what's in their water, and can be frustrating for natural resource districts and farmers to figure out where this nitrate's coming from and how to deal with it.
So once these nitrates end up in our drinking water, what are the impacts to people of Nebraska?
There's been a connection between drinking water with high nitrates and blue baby syndrome, which is when infants don't have enough oxygen in their blood and they turn blue. But there's work being done at the University of Nebraska Medical Center to look into pediatric cancer and high nitrates and birth outcomes or birth defects in water. The Water, Climate, and Health program at UNMC is looking into one concern that there appears to be a link between drinking high nitrate water and pediatric cancer, and drinking water with high nitrates and birth defects. So those are two of the sort of research areas that the Water, Climate, and Health program is looking into. One question I think they're probably trying to answer is why Nebraska has such a high pediatric cancer rate. We have the 7th highest pediatric cancer rate in the country, and the highest pediatric cancer rate in the Midwest. So why is that? Is it something in our water? Well, we don't really know. So I think that's something that the researchers at the Water, Climate, and Health program will hopefully be able to, shed some more light on.
As you talk to people about this issue, did you find stories of people working on solutions?
Yeah, I did. I think that's gaining in popularity, this approach in journalism. It's called solutions journalism, My project wasn't really a solutions journalism project, but there is more sort of, I guess, a renewed emphasis on writing news stories that focus on solutions. And I did find some really interesting things going on. There's a UNL researcher named Dr. Shannon Bartelt-Hunt, and she's leading a citizen science project where they are doing outreach and encouraging private well owners to test their water for nitrates. Anyone can test their water and send in their results, and then a technician or researcher will come out and do a follow-up test if the initial result came back as having the high nitrates. There's also work being done at UNL. One researcher is using algae to clean nitrates out of water at water treatment plants. So I think there's definitely things going on. The NRDs all over the state are engaged in pilot projects with farmers to try to find ways to help them maintain their yields, but also use less water and use less fertilizer. So there's definitely some promising things going on.
How might the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute and the Nebraska Water Center also be part of the solution?
I mean, there's so many great minds at the Doherty Institute and the Water Center. And I just think knowledge is power, but I think sometimes it can be difficult to get all this really interesting, relevant research out there to the public. And so I feel like that's maybe one of the areas that the Water Center and the Institute can be a part of, is thinking about ways to increase awareness and communication to the public about nitrates in the drinking water, whether it's to encourage people to test their private well water, or educating and working with farmers and doing research, education outreach to farmers about, different ways that they can reduce their fertilizer use, but yet still maintain their yields. And then also, I just think public awareness. I think the more people know about a problem, the more they're talking about it, the more likely I think there is to maybe be action happening, or, real change happening. So I think awareness and communication are definitely can be a part of the solution, because there's already a lot of really great research going on.
So if people want to learn more about this issue, where can they go to read more about it?
My reporting on nitrates in the groundwater, you can read it and watch the videos at nitratesInNebraska.com. And on the About This Project page, there's actually a bunch of links to state websites where you can look up the nitrate violations in your town, or you can look at the latest drinking water report for the state. So there's some resources on that website as well.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm so glad that we could visit with you today, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you in the future.
Thanks for joining us this time on the Doherty Water for Food podcast. Make sure to visit our website, waterforfood.nebraska.edu, to view show notes or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.